Wonderful Tuesday night, everybody. Christopher McDonald. Glad to see you on the McFiles. And it's good to see Braddy Johnson tonight. That's code speak. I thought you CIA types would appreciate that. That's code word, for McDonald's on there, and he's a little wired tonight. So just for you, Johnson. Just for you, man. It's good to see you, buddy. It's been a little bit, but always a pleasure to have you. Brad Johnson, everybody. Most of our audience knows him. IntelReform.org, former CIA operative. And he always brings a smile to our face. We still don't know if Elvis is behind that garage or not. One of these days, he's going to push a button, and I think he's going to shoot out of his chair, and the whole thing is going to be revealed. I said that on the radio today. I need to get with you about the radio. We need to get you on the radio program, too. We do that in the afternoon. I got a radio show now. Good to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you as well. Thank you very much. You are a little wired tonight. I might take back that espresso maker I bought you last Christmas. I might have to take that back.
You might.
And plus, I'm beginning to think you don't trust me, Chris. That I told you Elvis is behind that brick wall. You don't believe me.
Yeah, I know.
He lives there year round now. Eats peanut butter and bacon and banana sandwiches and. Yeah. Skinny Elvis sandwiches. Those are good, by the way. I've actually had one.
Well, the next time that I buy you that hamburger at McDonald's, bring him out and let me get a selfie with him, and then you can put him back in there, okay? Because me and him will probably have the same hair color, if he's got any hair at all by this time. So I don't know, about that.
That's why he's a little camera shy.
That's why. That's why he's a little. We need to do a show sometime. We did one. I don't know if you remember this. It was right after we met. We did a CIA conspiracy show and talked about a lot of the famous CIA conspiracies. We need to revisit that because we got a brand new audience, but we got a little bit more important things to talk about tonight. But it's seriously, it's good to see you, and it's been a while, 4.5 months, man. With Trump, he's in Saudi Arabia tonight, Qatar, and headed to the UAE. I had misspoken to our audience. I thought he was going to stop by Israel, but that's not on his agenda. He'll be coming back to the States, and sort of strange there. But I do want to ask you what your thoughts were today. The Saudis seem to be playing ball with him. $600 billion they're invested in our country. It's going to produce 2.12 million jobs, and Trump pretty much gave them assurances that we're going to stand with him against Iran. He warned Iran again today. He said, you can play ball with me and we can have peace, or you can be Iran and I'll blow you to kingdom freaking come, basically, in South Georgia terms. But he was pretty tough today. But, that's Trump. And I think we're respected again. And I think the Saudis respect strength because I don't know if you saw it, but the way that they came out for him today and received him, and just the laughter of the Saudi prince and the way he just interacted with Trump. I mean, there's a lot of respect there today. And, we normally don't get that from the Arab world. And they sure didn't give Joe Biden that respect. And I know they wouldn't have given Kamala Harris that. But we got a president again, man. We got a leader.
We absolutely do. And there's no question that those countries that he's visiting right now in the Middle East are going to play ball, as you say, just to steal your term there. But they're going to get along. There's going to be some agreements come out of it. All of those agreements were negotiated in advance, which is one of the reasons why he's going there. You did mention Israel. Netanyahu has made at least one trip to the United States, maybe, I think just the one, maybe another one got snuck in there somewhere along the line. So that communication is going really well. And there's just no question that Netanyahu and Trump get along really well, see eye to eye. I know one of the things that you do in your show is support Israel. I get pushback on that issue quite a little bit from people saying, well, it creates us all this trouble and blah, blah, blah. Well, I just have to argue to everybody and say, look, is our national security here in the United States of America, is our national security better with a free democratic Israel in the Middle East? And there is no other way to slice it. We are better off with Israel existing there than we would if it were gone. So I don't understand really the argument. It's based kind of on hatred of Jews. We've seen the anti-Semitism be pretty out of control here, even the universities and chasing down Jews on campus and smacking them around and destroying their activities and things like that we've seen. And in the UK today, you cannot have any sort of Jewish event without armed guards.
Wow.
You cannot do it. And that's a whole industry in the UK. The UK is in just full free fall. It's in complete meltdown. I feel sorry for the people that are there, and they keep voting in these yahoos. I really do not understand what's wrong with the UK. At least people get fooled here in the United States up to a certain amount, and then we kind of fight back, and that's what we're seeing with Trump. And kudos to him on almost all fronts. Which I have some things I'd like to talk about the CIA tonight too, if you'll throw in a minute or two to let me cover that stuff. So, I've talked quite a little bit about the current director of the CIA and Dan Bongino, who's director of the FBI and things. We saw how the FBI and the CIA were used They had been politically corrupted. They'd been, politicized and weaponized against conservatives, and they would start to investigate, like the terrorism money. The terrorism money was taken away. Everyone has their terrorism budgets. FBI, CIA, and everybody else has budgets set aside to combat terrorism. All that money, the vast majority of it, was pulled back out of combating like ISIS and Al Qaeda and groups like that, and it was for domestic terrorism. And they're saying to stop domestic violence and terrorism. And so what did they start to investigate? Conservatives and the Catholic Church and people like that have never conducted any violence, and all the groups that are out there really conducting violent acts and believe and espouse violent acts. Right. Those guys don't get investigated. So it's just been spinning out of control. At any rate, one of my worries has been: are we going to take that back? And the FBI, Dan Bongino, is doing some stuff, but he's actually been fairly quiet. And I would say our new director, Ratcliffe of the CIA, has been so quiet and outfoxed already that I've sort of been thinking he's a short-term solution and he'll leave fairly soon. I have one other scenario I would like to comment on, and that is that the Trump administration has proven itself very impatient with people that don't toe the line.
That's a great point.
And within the administration. And there was a guy that was put in to Department of Justice to oversee the immigration judges, and that was his department. And he was in there for about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
He crossed the line, and then bam, that guy was gone. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to do and had been brought there to do, so he was gone. And so they show, to be fairly ruthless in that sense of, if you're not doing your job, you're out. So it makes me question, why is Dan Bongino a little bit quiet? He's, like I say, he's doing some stuff, but you don't see him making a lot of movements to clear up the FBI. And we all have to face facts. The FBI is a badly damaged organization. I mean, the trust for them has gone down the toilet when you have the Washington field office just pick up and go down and raid Trump's home and take all the classified documents and throw them out on the floor and photograph them like that's how they were laying around. I mean, they're lying to the public, and they're clearly politically motivated to go do those things. So the FBI is basically a shit organization, and there's really no nice way to say it.
No, that's right. It's true.
Yeah, he's not doing that much to fix it. So, but he understands and wants to do it. So why aren't we seeing it? That's sort of why I'm now kind of stepping back and looking at this. And with Ratcliffe, I've criticized Ratcliffe, not as an individual per se. I mean, I think he's a fine guy. I don't have any problems with him. I mean, he's a politician, which doesn't put him that high in my book, but nevertheless, there's nothing wrong with the guy. And so, but he's the wrong guy to put into the CIA if you want to fix the CIA and correct those things, because as a lawyer, and the guy he's brought in as his deputy's a lawyer, and his chief of staff is a lawyer, and he's bringing in all these lawyers, which is the wrong profession to draw from if you want to try and fix the CIA, because you're never going to understand it. It's a completely different culture, and the two just really don't mix. So it makes me just question what's really going on. I combine that with one other little tidbit that's happened back when. Now, this is probably 3 months ago now, but one of them made a comment, and it was one of the fairly senior guys. I've kind of forgotten now, but it was somebody within the administration that was in a position to know, and he made a comment about how they've not forgotten, and they're going to investigate all of these things that were done against Trump, all the politically motivated things that were done to surveil Trump in his first administration. So now I'm kind of linking all those things together and wondering, maybe they're a little bit quiet now because they are truly investigating this. So This is something you and I have talked about many times, but just to review for everyone very quickly, basically in a nutshell, and we've thrown out plenty of evidence of all of this, it's not just speculation, there's very good reasons to believe it's true, that basically you had the then CIA Director John Brennan basically hatched this plan. This is the theory, right? So that he basically hatched this plan to smear Republicans and Trump and all of that, and he was doing it for his buddy Hillary Clinton, who he fully expected to be elected. I mean, everybody expected her to win. So he hatched this plan and came up with this Steele dossier, and that there were connections between the CIA and the Steele dossier being created, which was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign through her lawyers to then the Steele that did this dossier. So the dossier was all pure BS. There was nothing in there that was factual. Almost anything of any significance has been proven to be pure BS or just weird made up stories. But that was used as the basis of the FISA document that was given to the FISA judge via the FBI to surveil Trump, who was then candidate Trump for president. And that document, there are emails, for example, that I've mentioned where then director of the FBI and John Brennan, then director of the CIA, were arguing because the FBI director was going, this is a nothing burger. There's nothing there. This is all nonsense. We can't report using this document. And John Brennan said, no, you have to, because it's the Crown document, which is an analytical term. That's the main document. And we find other little supporting things, but they all go only to that, which we all know was a made-up, politically paid-for document pushed by John Brennan of the CIA. That is not in question because there were emails out there where he said this. So then if that is the case, then the CIA and the FBI conspired, used the FISA court system to spy on, without any cause whatsoever, candidate Trump and then later President Trump, which the FISA court renewed 3 different times after he was president of the United States. Now, if that's not political corruption, boys and girls, I don't know what is. So that is not forgotten. So I'm hoping, and I'm starting to believe, because of the inaction that we're seeing, that is why. I'm thinking
I hope so too, Brad.
That is being investigated. They're starting to put some stuff together, and it's being kept quiet now. We don't hear any rumblings of it, which also makes me fear it's not happening. But I'm hoping that that's going on in the background. There must be, because it's such a blatant, breaking of the law of the United States of America. And clearly the FISA court has been basically destroyed. It's no longer a functioning thing. I made a comment earlier, the FBI has basically become shit. Well, the FISA court has basically become shit. And whoever that judge is that approved those things probably needs to be looked at carefully and see if all those guys go to jail, because it was just so clearly politically corrupt. Why a FISA court judge really would just rubber stamp something to surveil the president of the United States is beyond me, absolutely beyond me. Why a judge would think that falls within the law is stunning, and no adult was in the room to look at this thing and say, no, your threshold's much higher, my friend, FBI. If you want to surveil the president of the United States, you need a lot more than what I'm seeing right here. So go get it and then come back and tell them, nuh-uh. Yeah. But that isn't what happened. So I'm hoping that that's going on in the background. If it is not, then we've got the wrong people in charge at the FBI and the CIA.
Totally agree.
There's no question.
Totally agree. Two things, and both these things give credence to your theory. I don't think it's a theory. I think you're on to something. And there's 2 things that happened just this week. One this weekend, and one happened Monday. I think Trump, it was yesterday, declassified all those documents pertaining to Crossway Hurricane, which is this very thing that you're talking about with the Russia hoax. And he even, Trump, I've come to know this about him. He is not one to play poker with. He's not going to give you his hand, but he gives you little nuggets. He gives you little droppings along the way to let you know what's coming. And he made the statement. He said the people that were behind this should be ashamed of themselves. And he even mentioned Joe Biden. And he mentioned, the whole situation was an attack on him and tried to get him thrown in jail. Tulsi Gabbard was on Megyn Kelly. And I'm going to get your thoughts on Tulsi in a minute. But she's the Department of National Intelligence head, DNI. And she said to Megyn Kelly, she said that the 2 most worst domestic terrorists that we have in this country right now is John Brennan and Adam Schiff. And she told Megyn Kelly, she says, we are going to pursue every aspect to make sure they are investigated for crimes against the country. And she sort of gave a little hint that it was tied to this very, very thing you're talking about. And I know that Trump's got a real tight hand on his cabinet, and if he didn't want her to say that, I don't think Tulsi goes out there and says that. Trump couldn't have sit down and said that himself because the media would have gone bat crap crazy. But Tulsi did. And I just think that those two things, Brad, I tend to agree with you that the reason we're being quiet, and that's why I've told my audience, because I get a lot of blowback about Bondi and Patel, and we don't see nothing happening. We don't see the Epstein list release. We don't see this list release. We don't see nobody in jail yet. And you and I both know, buddy, these things take time, and I would rather them get it right than rush through this and let's lose these fish and let these people walk on technicalities because we wanted to rush for everybody's impatience out here. We want to get it right because I think before we can move on as a country, morally and legally, and if there's ever a hope to get our justice system back into place, that it needs to be, Brad, there needs to be retribution. And I'm not talking about revenge, but there needs to be an accountability and an accounting for those that put this country through literal hell for 4 years during the first Trump administration. Because every bit of what they were doing, buddy, was a lie. I mean, this wasn't even like what they were producing was truth. It was complete lies. All of it. None of it was true. And they, at the moment, up to this moment, they've gotten away with it. And I'm praying to God that you're right. That maybe because we're not hearing nothing, that stuff is going on behind the scenes. Because, look, you don't want the public to get a hold of this and the media and all. And, look, I hate to see it, even on our side, these right-wing nuts that get on social media and throw their theories out and conspiracies and all this crap. Because the waters will get muddied, and some defense attorney will see something somebody wrote and use that and get these rascals and these scumbags off. And I think that we need to see justice, not revenge, but justice come to this country because we need to restore the rule of law, and we need to restore it quick.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You and I have touched on this previously as a subject, but also COVID, we need to see that same process be applied to COVID. And there's people starting to make noises now about Fauci going to jail and the things that he's done and being investigated and being held responsible for anything that he did. And there's a lot of evidence out there. I mean, again, stuff that we've talked about before in quite a little bit of detail, just to touch on briefly here, but there's a lot of information out there that he was in bed with the Chinese throughout this process and covering from them, and internally he got a lot of pushback from other scientists, medical scientists that were taking a look at all of this stuff saying, well, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. And I was saying from the very, very get-go that, that there are two possibilities here. This came out of China from their laboratory there famously, and it was either released on purpose or it got leaked out by accident. And that particular lab had been written up a number of times by State Department years ago. Nothing recent, before all the COVID stuff, had been written up by State Department and multiple times for having shoddy security for the diseases and things that were being studied in there, the viruses and so on. So I had always kind of leaned towards it having escaped, and now that's, as it turns out, that was the CIA analysis from the very beginning. And and yet that was covered up. Well, who shut them up? But nobody. Why isn't anyone? Maybe Brennan. Why isn't anyone out there asking these questions?
Great question.
If that's your conclusion, when did you reach that conclusion? Well, okay. Who did you inform of that? Did you keep it secret from Congress? Did you keep it secret from the President of the United States? Okay. Well, then when was that reported? Where's the memo? Because all that stuff is recorded. And, then go back and look at it and start going to Adam Schiff, for example. If Adam Schiff was told from the very beginning that the CIA assessment was that it was leaked from the Wuhan lab, why was he out saying all this other stuff? Start holding these people accountable. And, the congressmen are free to say pretty much whatever the hell they want on the Hill, but, at least you should call them out on the stuff so everybody knows they're a liar. A dangerous liar.
How far up the chain does this web of lies go? Do you think it goes back to Hillary, Obama, Biden, Susan Rice? How far up does this go? I know the Soros connections and those people, but how far up will you think this is? And let me just interject this. This is why they tried to kill Trump twice. This is why they threw the law book at him. This is why they threw the kitchen sink at him. Because these sons of you-know-whats knew if he got into office, Brad, this scab was going to be removed. Because Trump, look, they're not dealing with somebody that is Joe Biden. Trump is, and look, if it was me, and I know the temptation in Trump's heart tonight is, I mean, I would want retribution. And I sense that there's a part of him that is making sure that this is not retribution, but he's wanting to make sure this doesn't happen again to a future president. Because, look, if our side was doing this to a Democrat, you know, I would be just as upset about it. I do not believe we need to do this to presidents just because you don't agree with them politically. And, you know, our side didn't do this. We don't do this stuff to Dems. We just suck it up. We pray. We pray to God we survive the 4 years. We pray to God our country don't go to hell before they get out of office. But you don't see us doing this kind of stuff. And even, you know, I'm just curious, how far up do you think this may wind up at the doorsteps? And are we going to have the kahunas in D.C. to put these high-level people in jail? Because that's going to be a massive shock to the system to see people like Obama and Biden and Brennan and Clapper, Comey. I heard tonight the Doge uncovered a $16 million payment or $6 million payment that he authorized to himself. Can't account for it. That kind of stuff, Brad, that's why we're sick of politics. That's why the Americans don't trust a soul in the government. You can't blame them.
No, you can't blame them. I mean, I can say some things that will happen or could happen and things that absolutely won't happen. I mean, Obama, nobody's going to go after Obama, although I'm sure he was aware of a lot of these sorts of things. And would have acquiesced to a lot of these things going forward. But nobody's going to go after him. He was the first black president of the United States, and they're not going to do it. Joe Biden, I don't think anyone will go seriously after Joe Biden because, let's face it, I mean, he was already fading, and now he's half vegetable, sitting in the sunlight in a pot, and he's just not mentally capable of defending himself in court or testifying, and you can't, I don't think you could, you couldn't rely on him to accurately report anything. He probably doesn't know what day of the week it is at this point. The man is not going to live very much longer, so he's going to die. So I think you can take those guys basically, off the menu for anything of that nature. They're just not going to do it. Now, the other question was, does it go all the way up? I mean, or how high does it go? I mean, it goes all the way. I mean, it goes all the way to leadership. The Perkins Coie lawyer doing the paying for the Steele dossier, and John Brennan planning it, and James Comey being involved, the FBI director and CIA director being involved. All that was, Hillary Clinton, I'm sure, was aware of it from the beginning. I would suspect. Now, this is pure speculation on my part. I don't know this part, but I would fully expect that what John Brennan did was come up with the idea of how to do this smear campaign against Trump and the Republicans, and went and sat down with Hillary and said, "This is what I want to do. But I need you to financially pay for it." And they sat down and said, "Yeah, okay, I'll have to do it through a lawyer as a cutout, so it can't be, so it doesn't, show coming directly out of my pocket to pay for this Steele dossier document." And then behind the scenes, John Brennan helped put it together by his chief of station, later director of the CIA under. Unfortunately, under the first Trump administration, and I think that was all coordinated there with the FBI, the CIA, and the British service, and this Mr. Steele who put it all together. So I think that was all planned out and discussed, and it was going to be paid for, and because you have a document pushed by the CIA but paid for by Hillary Clinton. Are we going to say that happened by pure coincidence?
No,
I think that's a outlandish conclusion, but it's in those cases Hillary Clinton might be in some legal trouble over it. I don't know. She's a lawyer. She's crafty, and maybe she's covered her tracks well enough. But I would say there's some risk for her. For former Brennan and Comey, there's some risk. Those sorts of guys, and that sends a better message. I mean, if I could see those three, Clinton and Comey and Brennan, put in jail. I'd rather have those three go to jail than Obama and
Me too.
And
I'll
Biden,
agree.
because
I'll agree.
Yeah, that smacks of less of politics and more of you broke the law and now you pay the price. if you go after Biden, not even Biden, but Obama, that just smacks of politics, which I think it's nice to see the end of that. So I think there's kind of the line. I think that's where you'll see people gone after, hopefully, and below. You'll see people below that. Whoever was the involved in this, helping John Brennan and working with James Comey on this, and I think Perkins Coie for their involvement.
The lawyers firm.
Yeah, I'd like to see them have their licenses yanked.
Well, how about Mark Elias, the whole architect of this crap that paid millions of dollars? He's the one that paid the money. He was the money behind the dossier. It was Hillary Clinton's best buddy, the Clintons, and he's still out there. He's the one basically financing these rogue judges, from what I understand right now. I do want to go on it's something similar. It's sort of same subject, but I got to ask you this, because I know before we get to questions tonight, I know one question is going to come up, and I'm going to go ahead and nip it at the bud, because I know it's eating at the minds of a lot of people, and I do want to get your opinion. Do you believe that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, is there enough left of the Epstein list that it's going to make a difference at all in who's arrested and who's not? Do you think we're ever going to see justice in that area? Because if there's one question I'm getting bombarded with, and I don't mind it, I understand people's fascination with it. I think some of it is unhealthy, but that's just my opinion. I think that the man's dead. We need to find out who was trafficked. Look, it's sad that Guthrie, the victim, one of the teen girls that he molested, committed suicide here just a few weeks ago, and it was very tragic. Yeah. And who knows what secrets she knew? Who knows what secrets Ghislaine Maxwell knows, that she's sitting in a Tallahassee, Florida prison, rotting away, and she's not going to talk. I mean, she'd rather die than talk. But I do have to ask you, as an intelligence guy, do you think that there's going to be any kind of resolution to this? And if the list is even released, where does it go? Because I hear this, well, we need to have it revealed. But to me, what's the purpose of having it revealed if nothing's done about who it reveals? And that's big name people, Brad. That's media, that's entertainment people, that's actors, that's financial people, it's personalities on television that we may see every night. It's politicians, senators. It goes deep. That list could go deep, who visited that island and did some horrible things to kids.
Absolutely, and you're touching on the problem with something of this nature, which is a lot more sensitive than, say, or I should say maybe sensitive and difficult to pursue than the other stuff we were talking about with the Steele dossier. But that one of the things you also heard me say 1,000 times, and I've met many congressional delegations as I've gone out overseas over and over. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of these guys through the years in the different places I've been, and most of the places I served in were areas of conflict, different things. So it was one of those high traffic areas for congressional delegations. So like I said, I meet these guys, I see what they do, and I've always said that 90% of the Democrats are basically scumbags, and about 50% of Republicans are scumbags. And so it's a small minority of pretty decent people in Congress. And it's just, right. If you add the 90% and the 50%, you're talking roughly 3/4 of Congress are, shitbirds, if I can.
You can use that. You can use that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You can.
All right. And so I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see roughly ratio, something like that, about 2 Democrats for every 1 Republican that's involved. But those Republicans are also there. And a lot of guys that are big names have gone over there. And as you said, in many fields, I wouldn't be at all surprised to have seen, even some of the bigwigs in academia and certainly in pharmaceuticals and certainly congressmen and senators and different types of politicians that are out there and big businessmen and things like that. I mean, because that was basically his business. Was what he did was he would come in and sort of restructure, massive holdings by somebody and try to set it up in a far more efficient way. That was basically his business plan. So he was using that island, come over and have sex with underage, attractive little girls, and and let's talk business. After you get laid and are relaxed having a drink, we'll talk about how to restructure your business, and I earn millions and millions of dollars. So there's going to be all sorts of people like that. So you got a lot of people that are very vested in not having that information get out.
And
now, can they be overcome? I don't know. For me personally, I look at it as, 50-50. I mean, Pam Bondi says she's going to do it. They've got access to a lot of that information. But as you say, releasing the list is one thing, and doing something with it is another. And just because somebody went to that island, it'd be easy enough to say, look, this is very embarrassing. I went there. Yes. I made 3 trips there, but none of that was going on when I was there.
Yeah.
I went there because it was a private venue for business meetings. So all I did was go there and discuss business. And here's the business deals we talked about. Here's the documents to prove it. What are you going to do then? How do you prove that guy's lying?
Great point. It's a great point.
He's going to look bad, but it's not kiss of death until you start trying to put people in jail for it and have people stand up and testify, as you said, until it goes through the court process and proves beyond reasonable doubt, and we start seeing people do some jail time. Until you see that, it doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't. It's not significant. It's going to blow over fairly quickly.
What kind of job do you think Pam Bondi's doing right now? 1 to 10.
Pam Bondi's out of Florida. She was always fairly political, so she's adept, I would say, in that way. She's no dummy. I'm not suggesting that. I mean, is she, a super impressive legal mind or something? I wouldn't say that either. I don't have tremendous, compliments or criticisms of her. I would say it's still a little bit early. We'll have to see how she plays out. What kind of start is she off to? I would say an okay start. She's out saying some stuff and doing some stuff where, and it's one of the things I know all of us, you and I and everyone else probably listening, we're all impatient. Just, get your butt in gear and start going after these people. But it is one of those things where you kind of want to start off quietly and start investigating this stuff and go back. But they've also got to go back and start looking at what former prosecutors have done, because a lot of former prosecutors have sort of whitewashed what really happened. They did a little investigation, but didn't really get into it very far and kind of didn't track things down. And within Department of Justice and prosecutors in general, whether it's at the state level or wherever, there is great reluctance for one prosecutor to go back and sort of rehash what a previous prosecutor has done. There's a real hesitation to do that, but there's a lot of things that I would like to see. And I spent a lot of time working on that Las Vegas shooting. I think that's a travesty of justice as well, where a lot of Americans got killed there. A lot of Americans were badly hurt. There's still people in physical discomfort and pain and problems from surgeries and everything that happened from their wounds there at that day. And a lot of people, their family members are dead. Well, what happened? They did they didn't even really do an investigation. I read the police reports and did a lot of work on reporting on those police reports, and there's things that just stand out as ridiculous. But they found the dead body. That's the guy that they know was at least a shooter involved in this thing, and did a lot of the logistics, bringing weapons and ammunition in and things like that. So they found their guy dead in the hotel room that was used to shoot from, and they closed the investigation. Now, was that a single shooter? Almost certainly not. Were other people involved? Almost certainly. But, we're not going to know because nobody investigates it. So I would say that's a travesty of justice, too. And I think that somebody should go back and look at that. And there's no reason Pam Bondi couldn't do something like that. But again, you've got casinos are big money. Las Vegas, is big business. They don't want to destroy Las Vegas. And like I said, you got big money saying, no, the investigation's over. We're not reopening it. They don't want liability. They don't want bad press, all of those sorts of things. But I mean, I don't personally, I don't think you can blame the casino really for any of this. I think it's
just had a madman. Yeah, you just had a madman killer. I mean, and the cover up. Yeah. You've heard it, I'm sure, many times. The cover up's always worse than the crime itself, and that's always been the issue with these things. And I'm with you. I don't think we've ever gotten to the bottom of that. And Brad, I would even go further to say that a lot of these suicide killings, like the Fort Hood comes to mind, even before Trump. a lot of these lone wolf shootings, these nightclub shootings, and all of these things, it just seems like they rush. They get these things investigated in 2 days, put under the rug. You never hear about them again, and it just adds fuel to people's speculation. And look, you can't blame for people for being inquisitive. You can't blame for people for asking questions. You can't blame people for thinking certain things. Well, maybe this is all cover up and whatever, because it don't help when you don't get clarity and you don't get a full transparency in the investigative process. And look, I think that's all we want out here. We just want the truth. We got about 15 minutes with you. I wanted to have, if you've got a question, folks, for Brad, go ahead and be putting them in. We're going to keep him over just a little bit tonight. Not too long, but I want you to ask some questions. David Polk asked a question, why bother with the Epstein list? And I'm going to run this by you. The reason, David, we bother with it is because people need to know who's on that list. Because I believe, Brad, what's going to happen is that inevitably, not everybody's going to be all ready to go to jail over a list. Somebody's going to run their mouth, because you know this. I mean, people break under pressure. And, the way an investigation is done, from what I understand, and I would have loved, I got my degree in criminal justice, you go after the small fish to get to the big fish. And somebody knew what went on that island. And it only takes one or two eyewitnesses to say, yeah, they were doing business deals, but they were having sex in the back room with a 5-year-old, and produce a name or produce a record, and then the thing goes on. So I do believe there is a need for the list to be released. Now, again, whether anything goes on with it, I don't know. But is that a fair statement that Patel and Bondi can put pressure on some of these people that are on that list and say, look, we got you, fake them out, do a do-si-do. We got you by the you-know-whats. If you don't talk, we're going to put you in jail for 100 years. And somebody's going to possibly give up the goods doing that. That's just my opinion. That may be a naive way to look at this, but I think that's why it matters that we put that list out there. And people do need to know who was down there.
I would be curious to see it too. I'd like to see, because I'd like it, from my perspective, I would view these people as tainted.
Absolutely.
And so I would like to see who's tainted, and especially I pretty much expect all the Democrats to be tainted, but I'm curious to see who are the Republicans that are tainted. Listen, if the political will exists to go after those people, it's not that difficult of a thing to do. And you mentioned that there's going to be people down there who knew what was going on and would if you put pressure on them, talk. But you forget there's also the young girls that were the victims.
That's exactly right.
Most of those women are alive. And most of those women, I think, would willingly testify. And
Absolutely.
They certainly know who they had sex with, and there was the one that had sex. This one that committed suicide was the one that had sex with Prince Andrew, who's now, been shunted aside and isn't active politically. But, it would be child's play. It would be child's play. You get, 4 or 5 of these girls to testify. You start arresting those people that were involved, and, sex crimes, for that sort of thing, for underage sex. And, big businessman and all that sort of thing. These guys, some of them are going to be tougher than others, of course, but these guys aren't, they're not the criminal element where they're tough that way. They don't have that street toughness, and most of those guys are fairly old. And it's like, do you want to spend the rest of your life in jail? I mean, look, guys like our age, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. That's not on my bucket list. So,
No, it's not. I don't think it's on anybody's bucket list, Johnson. Not at our age. Something else I want to ask you a question about. This is an opinion question. I've seen mixed reaction about this, and I personally believe it's not a big deal. But do you have any problem with Qatar giving Trump that jet? They didn't give it to Trump, and I tried to say this yesterday. They gave it to the Department of Defense, and there's this element of, even some on the right, Rand Paul is out there running his trap about it, and to me, he's nothing but a useless rhino. He's my senator to the north in Kentucky, and he has his moments of these righteous indignation moments, and I wish Rand would just shut up and do his job. Get on board the Trump train, Rand. You're not saving the country. You're not helping nobody. It was not a gift to Trump himself, and even Pam Bondi said once he's out of office, providing the airplane comes back to the Department of Defense, it ain't like Trump's going to carry the thing around and fly it to Mar-a-Lago. Brad, it was a $400 million jet, for God's sake. If it's free, it's free, man. Okay, I mean, Air Force One's outdated. Do you have a problem with any of this? I don't.
No, the United States takes skips, and there's very specific laws on how all of that works. And it's like anything more than $50 or $100 or something belongs to the government if you're gifted it.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's some ridiculous low amount. I mean, somebody buys you a nice bottle of scotch and that belongs to the government. I don't know. I just drink it personally, but that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's not gonna, what's he going to steal the jet out from under the nose of the government and have it parked at Mar-a-Lago and nobody's going to?
I know.
No, it is not. It's a gift to the government.
No, it's a gift to the government. Exactly. Now, I do want to ask you a question about Qatar because he's headed there next. Qatar has been tied to the funding of some of these universities with its anti-Semitism. Do you trust the Qatarian government to deal straight with Trump? Look, I'm not a big fan of the Saudis. It's not like I trust the Saudis, but of all the Arab countries on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the most trustworthy down to below, I would say that I saw the prince. I don't believe the prince wants to betray America. I don't think that. I may be wrong. I may be very naive. I think there's a part of him. I know he's an Arab, and I know the Arab world hates Israel. I think I see something in him, though, that he wants to at least be at peace with Israel. He may not be Benjamin Netanyahu's drinking buddy or eating buddy or golfing buddy, but he don't want to be overtly hostile to his neighbor to the northwest. But Qatar's different because there's a lot of jihadism there in that nation, and I'm curious in your knowledge, do you trust this Qatarian government to deal in good faith with him when he visits them tomorrow? And whatever they tell him, are they going to hold to any agreement that we do make with them?
Well, I guess I would look at this sort of thing as the old Reagan doctrine, trust but verify. I think that's essentially what you'd have to do with Qatar. I mean, I agree they're not a wholesome bunch of buddies that we can just count on to come through as they say they will. But will they deal honestly with Trump? Yeah, I mean, I think by and large, the world has a tendency to negotiate fairly honestly with Trump because they're afraid of what he'll do, and he's hard to predict that way. Whereas with Biden, a report came out that the Chinese said that they just didn't pay any attention to whatever Biden said because he was too weak to enforce it. Well, Trump is the opposite. He's more than strong enough to enforce what he says, and we've seen he's willing to take steps. I mean, this trade war, if you want to say it, the tariff war that we've been going through, is also a line in the sand.
That's exactly right.
And it's a very important message that he's been sending to the entire world on this. Everyone has capitulated. I mean, they're all coming to the negotiation table, and China has already, at last time I checked, like day before yesterday, China had said, well, let's negotiate. Let's negotiate because Trump, they would say, well, we're going to put 100% tariffs on you. And Trump said, fine, 200% tariffs on you. And, I know that I can play this game all day long, And
I told people not to worry about it. I said, if you think China's playing tough, just wait, just watch. And I predicted it 2 months ago. I said, all you folks freaking out about this, just stop. They're going to come and dadgummit this weekend, Brad. Look, let me just interject something real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But you think about what happened just this weekend, man. You had India and Pakistan stop wanting to nuke each other. You got Ukraine and Russia going to meet in Europe, Turkey here just a few days, possibly to have a ceasefire that's going to actually be a ceasefire. You had the tariff situation. China was threatening us with everything under the sun and calling Trump every name in the book, and the media was calling him every name in the book. And Xi folded like a tent in a hurricane. Please don't do this. And then you got 100,000 barrels a day now going in the Gulf of America that Google is getting sued over by the Mexican government to change it back. You got the last remaining American hostage, and we ain't even talking about that tonight. I wish I had time with you to talk about. But see, there's another story that is intriguing to me that nobody wants to talk about, and the media is actually calling this almost disgusting because he saved white farmers from South Africa that were being killed, brought them into the country. And I want you to give your thoughts on that. You've got the media tonight claiming that it's white segregist and white supremacy to bring people out of a land that's being threatened to be killed by their government. That's how nut jobs these media types are. But Brad, that's more stuff in a weekend than Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden did in 16 years of their presidency combined.
Every one of those guys was a wussy. Every one of them.
Every one of them
were wussies. And it's finally have somebody that's not a wussy, and so it's a grand thing to see. All of what really goes on in South Africa in particular is basically being covered up. But let's not forget, there was a previous example of this. Everybody knew what was coming. Let's not forget Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. The same thing happened. Rhodesia was a mini South Africa, and it was a white minority rule. They finally got overrun, basically, and basically all the whites in Rhodesia went to South Africa to live, because they started tracking them down and killing them and taking their farms and all of that. So everybody knew what was going to happen as soon as black majority rule hit. In South Africa, bigger country, better organized and stuff, they were able to hold it off longer. But it was a foregone conclusion as to how it was going to end up. And that's what they're doing, is the black majority, there's elements within the black majority, and the government now, their policy is that, it's okay to take away farms that have been owned by a family for 400 years. It's okay to take those away if the farmers are white. And, so people just come in and track down these guys and kill them. And, they just take out the machetes and chop them into pieces. And men, women, children, no mercy for anyone on these things that they're doing. And they think that's okay. And the press covers that up. Now, the press are a bunch of racist pigs. They hate whites and just pure racist. And Trump's doing something that is actually strictly following the law. And that is, if you have a truly persecuted group and they have no place else to go, and we can take them in and make them U.S. citizens and save them, he's doing it. Whereas you get these guys that are from, Central America largely and things like that. And that's a lot what the Democrats are coming out and saying is, Trump is the racist because he doesn't want to bring in these people from Central America. But the people from Central America are fleeing poverty, or they're fleeing other things. They're not,
and they're
being
terrorists.
Tracked down, and some of them most certainly are. And they're not being tracked down and murdered because they're Latinos. They're just trying to get out of a poor place, which is completely different. The law doesn't state, well, anyone that's poor who wants to come here, that's reason to bring them in. That's not the way the law works. But that's how it's been interpreted and allowed to be interpreted by all these wussies, including Bush, that we've been talking about. He allowed all that to go on. He didn't stand up and try to do anything about it. The last guy to try and stand up and do anything about all this stuff was our, dear President Reagan.
Yes, sir.
And now we've got Trump. So hopefully we'll get 4 or 5 more guys like those two in a row.
I got the same question from 2 different people, and I was going to ask you this myself because I've got mixed feelings about this, and we're going to do a late show tonight and talk about it more. Late this evening, before he left Saudi Arabia, he lifted the sanctions on Syria, and Syria has got a jihadist leadership now. I'll just read you the 2 questions. Carol Smith is basically saying, she's asking, what do you think about it? But Roger Hooker's question is asked a little differently, and he says, is Trump offering Syria an olive branch a good idea, being the country now has new leadership? And that new leadership, Brad, look, I'm no fan of Bashar al-Assad, but Bashar al-Assad protected minorities. He protected Christians. And this jihadist government's been slaughtering Christians and minorities like left and right. And look, I love President Trump, but I'm just curious because I've been meaning, this has sort of been eating at me all night. I'm glad we've got to this point of the interview. What is your take on this? And look, because President Trump, I don't know who's giving him this advice. Do you think it's one of those things, I hope this works out, I hope doing this olive branch, they're going to stop killing the Christians and stop killing the minorities, and we're not going to have a brush up, and he's going to offer them the same olive branch he's offering Iran? Or do you think lifting them sanctions is such a good idea right now? Because this leadership, to me, is worse than Bashar al-Assad's was. That's just my opinion.
I would tend to agree they're worse, and certainly the killing of Christians is pretty well established in Syria. I would say, well, I would characterize it slightly different. I would not characterize this as Trump holding out an olive branch to the Syrians. I would reverse this and say that this is the Syrians holding out an olive branch to Trump. They're the ones that approached him and said, "Hey, look, we'll give you access to the oil fields. We'll let you bring in American companies. We'll allow peace with Israel. We'll do all this stuff if you'll lift the sanctions." And I think Trump looked at that and said, "Yeah, okay, all right, we'll do that. I'm gonna hold you to it. I'll slap those right back on if you screw with me." And I think that's where we stand tonight. Was he looked at the situation and said, "That's fine. All right, I'm bringing in these companies, to these oil fields, and I want peace with Israel, and and stop killing these people in there, and we'll do it." So I think Trump accepted what was offered versus him going to them and say, "Hey, if you guys stop, I'll go ahead and lift these." I think it was tit for tat here with the Syrians reaching out first. So I think it was well done. No guarantee it's going to be a perfect solution, but if we can start having Americans develop in there and start establishing better relationships and business and have some investment, and it brings something to us, lowers the oil prices. If they do sign a peace treaty with Israel, that has legs. That can pay dividends out into the future in a number of ways. Also, it puts political pressure on Iran. And it puts political pressure on the other Arab countries to settle. Let's not forget, many years ago, Sadat in Egypt reached out the same thing and made peace with Israel. He was tired of getting his ass kicked in the war, wanted his territory back.
That's true.
And he made peace, and that peace has lasted. And we've seen that peace slowly spread. And there's a decent relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel and other countries there, and we may be taking another step in that direction. Now, can it blow up in our faces? Yes, it can. The future is always very uncertain in those things. Circumstances could change, but I think it was well done.
Okay.
I'm happy with that move. I think it was the right move under the circumstances, and I hope and pray that it will pay dividends in the future.
Do you think that he made a stipulation, and I pray he did, about these Christians? Do you think that that's part of this, that he's told them to stop, that you've got to stop slaughtering the minorities? I hope that's in that. I don't know if you're aware, have any knowledge to that, but that would have been a no-brainer to me. That's where we would have started from right there. I would have said, look, you're killing innocent people and women, because that's what, look, if you remember his first term, the only 2 times that we had any kind of military action out of Trump was in the first year. And it was over the gas, Bashar al-Assad gassing his people. Trump told him to knock it off. He didn't do it. He did it again. And it is boom, boom, it was done. And we never had another military excursion at all during the 4 years of Trump. And I wonder if maybe that he said, I have no problem bombing the living you-know-what out of you. And, I read one report that the Syrian leader is wanting to build a tower to Trump, almost like an effigy of Trump. It's a good effigy to put Trump Tower in Damascus, man. It's just nutty, Brad, that this is what's going on in America right now under Donald Trump. It's crazy, isn't it?
I would say the rest of the world, if there's a power vacuum, that is dangerous. And what we have had, the United States is the leader of the world, for better or worse. It's the leader of the world. And when the United States is so weak and inept, like you saw under a senile Joe Biden, who corrupt and senile and all of those things, when you see a country that's so weak, that creates a power vacuum, and everybody's afraid of that. So I think in many ways, and by the way, with very good reason, people are afraid of that. And I think now to see a strong leader come in, everybody can kind of take a sigh of relief and go, okay, we're good for the next 3.5 years now. Things will settle down, and let's make the best of this situation here, and we can get along with this guy, because there's a very good chance he'll be succeeded by someone of his own, his own way of thinking, maybe the current vice president, who knows, but there's probably another 8 years behind these 4 years coming. So that gives us 12 years. That's almost a lifetime, of building better economy and getting along and seeing things work well. So I think the world is all going to basically try to get along with Trump because, like I said, he's strong. He's not afraid to act. He's very decisive. He will take strong actions against people. I think you're going to see serious negotiations. Russia would love to get out of this problem with Ukraine. Now, they want to have what they want to have, which is the Crimea. But if there's a way to negotiate something where they can get at least enough of what they want, they'll settle. And let's hope it takes place. And with Syria going on, I mean, I think there's a good chance you're going to see him usher in peace because peace is through strength. Peace is not through weakness. That's why we saw these conflicts begin, was because of weakness. And none of this would have happened under Trump, and that's why.
So the peace branch is not so much Syria to Israel, it's Syria to the United States. I want to make that clear. Yeah. And I think because there's a biblical connection to that my Bible students I have in the morning we're talking about. But I want to make that clear. This olive branch was not Syria to Israel, it's Syria to America, correct?
That's right.
That's what I thought.
It's a concession to the United States of America to get sanctions lifted, which says these aren't Israeli sanctions, they're U.S. sanctions. But they know that to make this deal, they have to make peace with Israel, too, because that's a U.S. demand. So that's the deal.
Do you think there is any rift? I know the media is trying to play this up, that there's some kind of distance between Netanyahu and Trump. And Huckabee was out there yesterday telling the Israelis, look, Trump loves you. We've got your back first. We're not going to betray you. I do find it strange. Do you have any inkling why he wouldn't visit Israel on this trip? I mean, I know it was more business and pre-planned, but he was talking about maybe going to Turkey to see the Russia-Ukraine thing, but there's no plans on this trip for him to stop in Israel. I thought for sure, Matt, even if it was for a day, just to sit down with Bibi and talk and sort of calm the fears of the Israeli government. You got any thoughts on that?
I don't think there's any serious fears on the part of the Israeli government. I know those guys have phone calls all the time. I know they have a good relationship. Netanyahu, like I said, has already been here. So if Trump just met with Netanyahu, 2 months ago or something, why would they have another meeting?
Okay,
it's a little bit too soon.
All right.
And there are optics as well. I think out of respect to the Arabs, go meet with the Arabs, have a trip to go meet with them, and then come home and, meet with Netanyahu again next time. I mean, he will meet with Netanyahu again. And I think it gets reported that there's a lot of worries on the part of the Israeli government. They're going to be stabbed in the back or betrayed or, left to rot, whatever. I think there's reports of that nature. But at the Trump-Netanyahu level, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I don't think it's true. Yeah.
I know we've been talking a lot about overseas stuff tonight. I want to hit you quick fire, 10 minutes max, about these domestic things. The big pharma, Trump dropping these drug prices. The New York mayor getting arrested, this ICE detention. What's been your thoughts about seeing these congresswomen and congressmen raid these ICE facilities and these threats being made against the ICE agents? I think every last one of them needs to have their carcass put in jail for 30 years, 20 years. And I'm telling you, I have no sympathy for what happens to these people. I think they're as vile. They're worse to me than the gangbangers. They're worse to me than the rapists and the murderers. They're Congress people. They should know better. I mean, we elected them to represent we the people, and you've got some of them blowing kisses at the people that are trying to invade us and trying to destroy this country. And I would take a hard line against it. And I don't know if you've heard this story. I'm just curious if you've heard anything about this. There was a report out yesterday, couldn't confirm it. Kash Patel said, and Bondi both, that there are at least 3 judges, and it's the same little group that's been giving Trump a lot of headache here over the last 3 or 4 months. See, that's another thing. We got to pinch ourselves. It's only been 4 months since he's been in office, Brad. It feels like he's been in office for 4 years already. Everything's going on. But they believe that there was money passed between the cartels to these judges to do what they're doing. And I can't confirm that. But if that's the case, is that not treason to you? Is that not treason?
Well, I mean, it's a treasonous act, but is it treason like under a legal definition that they would go to be convicted and go to jail for treason? No.
Okay.
I don't think it approaches that, but certainly it's illegal. They're being bribed. It's corruption. I mean, that's stuff they would go to jail for. I'd be perfectly happy to see them go to jail for corruption. If they can prove that they're taking payoffs to change their findings as a judge, then that's go to jail stuff, no question. Those are treasonous things. It's where they put their interests above those of the United States. But like I said, you don't meet the threshold of breaking that law to go to jail under those laws. But who cares? That one judge that took the guy that was going to be arrested by ICE out there,
she got indicted today.
Out the back door.
She got indicted today.
Yep. All that stuff. All that stuff needs to be enforced. Is that a treasonous act? Yes, it is. But she's not being indicted for treason. She's being indicted for this
obstruction of
for
justice.
Breaking the law. Yeah, obstruction of justice. So
doesn't it make you mad though, as a citizen and as a former person that you served your country faithfully to uphold the law, to make sure that we didn't have these rogue regimes become us, that we didn't become like third world banana republics? It's got to, from a person that fought to keep us free of this stuff, and we're having this happen from within. I mean, it disappoints me, yes, but it makes me mad that we've got people in our country that would sell our country down the toilet for this, and money and bribes, and it's all a political vendetta. They hate Trump, they hate conservatism, they hate these things, and yet they'll sell us down the river to these people that would want to destroy us. It's sort of frustrating, to be frank with you.
Yeah, those guys, the congressmen and women that are out there doing this stuff, I mean, what they're looking for is publicity, and that's how they get. You and I have talked about this, but in Congress, you're elected every 2 years. That means basically you're in election mode all the time. There's never a time where you're not looking for contributions to your campaign, because you have to have a war chest every 2 years to run. If you get challenged or something, you need to be prepared. So they're always running for office. And so to go out and get in front of the cameras and do these things, that plays to a very hard line area of their constituency, and that hardline area of their constituency are the ones that pay money into the campaign. So that's what they're doing. Now, they're also breaking the law. I mean, what are they doing? Again, for me, it is a treasonous behavior, but what their actual act is, for me, is they're putting self above everything else, and including the needs of the country and what's best for the United States of America and all that. They put themselves above the United States of America. So they're scumbags. That's what I'm always saying about these guys. They're scumbags.
They're scumbags. I'll give you that. They are definitely scumbags. Buddy, you outdid yourself tonight. I'm going to let you go. It's about 9:15. And listen, I wanted you to come back. I know that we won't be able to see you much over the first part of the summer, so I may get you back at the end of May. Come on back, give us an update on a lot of these things, because the way it's going, Trump may have solved the Lindbergh baby question and maybe found a cure for cancer by the end of May, the way this is going right now. I have to say, Brad, I've been pleasantly surprised. It was hard to read what was going to happen. I knew that he would have headwinds. If we could get this do-nothing Congress off their butts and get their jobs done, man, and they've got to codify these executive orders in the law. They just do. And that's the only thing I see right now that has not been good so far in these first 4.5 months. And I pray for the man. I pray for his safety. But I think that we could not have asked for a better start to his second term than we've gotten these first 4.5 months. I'll let you wrap this up. I'll let us wrap this up on that.
I would say too, we need to see what the midterm elections are going to do. If Trump can pick up another few seats in Congress, that's going to start to send messages, and it'll be easier for him to start to get things through Congress. We really didn't get the votes there that we should have.
That's true.
So, if he loses the majority in the House, I mean, he needs to get everything done he can get done now. But if he loses the majority in the House or the Senate or something, that's going to be a real problem. That'll make him basically the lame duck for his last 2 years. So, don't want to see that. I'd like to see him push forward and get as much done as he can. And unfortunately, you've got some very liberal scumbag sort of Republicans out there that just don't like him, and so they'll push back only because they don't like him versus having an actual reason to do it. So yeah, it's a precarious position, but he is doing well, and depending on who becomes president next, maybe those presidential executive orders are gonna stand for a long time.
They will. Do you think Rubio's doing a good job? I've been pleasantly surprised with Marco Rubio. I mean, he's not been perfect, but I think that he's done a pretty daggone good job in, holding down the Secretary of State's job. And I know he's got the he's got Waltz's job now because Waltz couldn't keep his cell phone on silent or something. But what you think of Rubio, real quick, as we wrap it up?
Well, I would say Rubio has proven himself to be politically adept. I would say, he had a confrontation with Doge over who's going to do what in State Department. Doge lost, he won. He then, has taken over the National Security Advisor seat. So that again was there would have been a political pushback on that. So he's won again. So I think he's proving himself very adept. What's going on? I mean, he's doing some things well, kind of policy-wise. I see him doing well. Going back to kind of, the most broken federal agency that we have is State Department. They're badly, badly broken. I mean, they're the worst of all.
It's very true.
And talk about, being political, weaponized and politicized. I mean, they're the worst of all. And I don't see him doing anything really on that front. Will he? Is he slowly putting himself in position to do so? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. What my fear is, you remember Mike Pompeo?
Yes.
We talked about him quite a little bit. Mike Pompeo, again, was a conservative businessman and became a congressman and then director of the CIA. And he was a good guy, but he was mostly interested in himself. And he was at the CIA grooming connections and things to run for president of the United States. And then he became secretary and did nothing to fix the CIA, even though he knew those problems were there. Then he went to State Department and did the same thing. He didn't do anything to fix the problems at State Department. He went in there to look good and try to do some things that did look good and groom the situation to his needs with his future run for president of the United States. And so as a result, he badly damaged himself. He was not invited back into this second Trump administration, and I think politically he's basically dead in the water. He's never going to do anything again. I'm afraid Marco Rubio is the same. I'm afraid that Marco Rubio is going to eventually break with Trump because he's going to be doing what is in his own best interest versus trying to help Trump succeed. And so when that happens, you know how Trump is.
I know.
He's not patient with those guys. So I think that will be the future of Marco Rubio. I think what he'll do is eventually part ways over doing what's best for him politically versus what Trump is trying to accomplish. So
I hope that's not the case, but I see your point. I do, buddy. Well, man, I wish I could keep you forever, but you and Elvis need to get your rest and your milk and cookies tonight, so I'm going to let you do that. Hey, I do want you to plan on end of May. Well, this is May, but maybe in a few weeks, we may bring you back on a quick Tuesday night to just give us an update of anything that may happen, and we'll be seeing you after the summer break and all. But I appreciate you. You know, we've known each other almost 8 years now, and it's been a pleasure, and you've always been a great friend, and looking forward to seeing you in person sometime over the summer and having another steak and solving the world's problems behind the scenes, stuff we can't say on the air. But it's such a pleasure to have you, man. Thank you so much. And listen, I'll let you go, and have a good night, Brad. We appreciate you being with us tonight, man.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. And saludos to all your audience.
Brad Johnson, everybody, intelreform.org. Look him up on the website, support him. Brad, thank you. Have a good night, buddy. Be blessed.
Thank you.
Brad Johnson, everybody, such a good guy right there. We're so grateful for him. And I'm going to come back over here real quick. I should pop up on the screen. There we go. Listen, we had a good interview with him. That's powerful stuff. If you enjoyed Brad, put some fire in that house. And we appreciate you all being with us tonight. Stephen, you're right. Hamas leader Muhammad Sinwar, he was the brother of the other Sinwar. He was defeated and eliminated tonight, so another terrorist is gone. It does not pay. I should have asked Brad. I'll have to ask him on the next program that me and him need to start our pager business that we were going to start in the Arab world. We don't know how he was eliminated. I forgot to ask Brad that. It was something I forgot to ask him. Is it time for us to start our Mac Johnson pager service to the Arab world? We could be millionaires right now. Hold your pager. Make sure it don't blow up in your face. We could be billionaires. I'm sure we could have a few errors by those from us. But yes, he is eliminated, and you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and that is how it is in the Middle East. But Israel's not going to play around. I've got some thoughts on the Syrian situation, and the individual that mentions, did you hear about the cartel shooting in Mexico? That's about like, did you hear about the Pope giving Mass to Catholics? It happens every day. There's cartel shootings down there every day, so pick your number. There's a number of them that go on down there. And I don't mean that catty or anything like that, but yeah, there's cartels are a dangerous group, and they need to be eliminated, and it's what makes all this stuff with these Dems so vile and disgusting, that they're going down there and basically siding with the cartels against America, siding with the terrorists, siding with these gangs, siding with these gangbangers and rapists and pedophiles and traffickers, and they're siding with them. They don't care. They don't care that these people, what they've done to American citizens, and they should care. They should care, but they don't. But anyway, the Syria thing is going to have to play out. But remember this, folks, that he made this. He made this deal with America. They made this deal with America. Johnson's in the chat room. Hey, Johnson, I was telling him that me and you need to start our pager business to the Middle East. We could become millionaires. Thank you, buddy. You did a great job tonight, as always. IntelReform.org is his website, folks, and I encourage you. It's one of the best websites out there. I mean, really and truly. You go on there, and if you want to donate a few dollars to him every month, feel free to do that. I think it'd be great. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. He does a lot of work behind the scenes to keep us informed, and we've got guests that are with us one time and they're gone, and I'm glad that Brad Johnson's not been one of those guests. I'm glad that he's stayed with us all these years and been one of the best guests we have here on the McFiles, and I mean that. And he's just a good guy. He's one of the good guys, and I appreciate him very, very much. All righty, we're going to take a break. I'm going to regather my thoughts. We're going to have a late night show, probably around 11 o'clock tonight, to wrap up the day. There's been a lot of developments in Saudi Arabia. We've got a few videos. We're not going to keep you long, but we're going to keep you just a little bit tonight. If you want to stay up with us, we usually have a more larger audience late than we do even on the early birds, because people are bored and they can't stand the late night talk show host, so they'll just soon come back in here and listen to this dumb Southerner run his mouth for a few minutes than to listen to Fallon or Colbert or the other one, Fallon, Jimmy Fallon, whatever his name is. I don't know his name. Kimmel. So we'll make you laugh a little bit. We've got a few funny videos I found. We'll keep you entertained. Take your questions tonight. Take your thoughts, and just discuss things a little bit more tonight. Good to see everybody. And we hope that you have a great evening. Thank you all you folks in Facebook. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We've had another good audience in the house, and I will see you back here probably around 11 tonight for a late show. We may have a special guest pop in. We're trying to get her to come on, and but we'll see if she can come tonight. If she can't, we'll be another time. But I tell you what, we do have Carla Nicole coming Thursday night. You don't want to miss her. And tomorrow night, of course, is Wednesday night's Faith Night. Friday night, McJustice returns to the McFiles. First time probably in 5 years. We're going to be basically doing it on the news side and Facebook maybe. But it's basically a show that we highlight the criminal justice cases, and we're going to basically just play videos of criminality without a lot of commentary, just to show you how lawless our country's become. And it's going to shock you. Language warning for Friday night. Some of these videos, can't edit them, and it's raw video, and people let a few words out. So if language is not your thing, then you might want to sit this one out. But we're doing the best we can to edit them as much as we can, but there's some that we can't. But you're going to be shocked at some of the stuff you see that's going on out there in that world, in this society. And folks, this is why what Trump's doing is so important. He's trying to restore the rule of law to this land. He's doing it with the border. He's trying to do it to these other nations that have not been ruled by the rule of law. And there's a new sheriff. There's a new sheriff in the White House. And he's not Joe Biden. He's certainly not Kamala Harris. He's not Barack Obama. He's not the Bushes, and he's not the Clintons. He's Donald John Trump. And I salute him for what he's tried to do in restoring the law, the rule of law to our country. We so need it, bad. But to see these videos, you're going to be shocked at what's actually going on out there and how people... I feel like, folks, we've got a society that has turned itself over to Satan himself. Some of these videos are going to shock you. They really will. And we're going to talk about some other legal things. It'll be about an hour is all, but it'll be McJustice Friday night, and we'll see what happens late. But listen, may the Lord bless you. We'll be back here in about... if Johnson's out there, if you're still around, Johnson, this is the song that you never hear. I found this one, and I thought this one was pretty good, and it sort of has that James Bond theme to it. It just says we were set up. So this is for you, Johnson, if you're out there. Thank you for being with me tonight, man. Folks, we'll be back here in a little while. If you enjoyed the show tonight with Brad, put some fire in that house. We'll be back later tonight. McFiles Late Show. Come on back.